Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. Andrew, shut the fuck up, you piece of shit. Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. It's going to be a wild ride. GG, motherfuckers.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Talk to Thorin, and my guest for this one is going to be Jason Lake. To me, he'll always be Complexity 1, but he just calls himself Jason Lake now, I notice. He's abandoned the alias. Listen, to be fair, if you get the backing of the Dallas Cowboys, probably don't just be known as a single number. You know, it's probably not the best alias, right? You know?
Yeah.
So, okay, for people who don't know, this is going to be a topical interview where I'm going to talk to Jason about the current squad he's made in Complexity, maybe a little bit about Complexity in CSGO. And being as I'm someone also who hails from the 1.6 background, I think people might be surprised when they find out some of the sort of almost similarities in how things happen. It's funny, you know those old sayings that like, there's nothing new under the sun. There really isn't in some ways. Like, I mean, as I'm sure we're going to get to, a lot of the factors that come to building a good team are the same if you have no money, if you have some money, and if you have all the money. Like, at the end of the day, I always think that in sports, even the people who think that, for example, like some all-star team in traditional sports, they just got all the best players and bought them. It's like, listen, a lot of people tried that route and failed. That's not as easy as you think, you know.
Yeah, history might not repeat, but it sure does echo.
Yes, there you go. So, okay, this is one thing I want to talk about is when people see this current lineup, like let's talk about the current lineup first, because I think it's going to be the most interesting anyway. We can hop around a little bit. It can be like a Tarantino film or something, right? When you made this tweet after the major where your team was eliminated, where, you know, one of the problems I always think in our CSGO scene is this, and I think for me, I put your team in this category. You can tell me what the financial background was, etc. There's a lot of teams where just making the major, it's not that it's enough, but it's like, it sort of is enough. As in, just to have the chance to be in that lottery, to think that you could have the miracle run. I mean, you did when you had the old Stanislaw line, when you made the top 8 run. To think that, listen, if you see it that major, a Vanguard make the final, I'm sure that made a lot of teams out there think, maybe you don't need the big names, right? I can just stick with the team I have now. Maybe, you know, they get it together. The problem I always think is, like, that's all well and good. It's good to have hope. It's good to have belief. But sometimes you also have to, I think, do what you did here, which is basically face a harsh reality. And in that tweet that you gave to people, you essentially did, whether it was intentional or not, you did sort of sub-communicate to some of your current players. Like, you know, I'm sorry, dude, like, you're not going to be in this team. Some of you aren't going to be here. Like, some people are going to have to change. And you know what? You then also laid out the kind of stakes that I'm going to try, I mean, sure, this was to the fans, I'm going to try and get the best players I can. Like, you know what, I'm going to go out there. And the reason you were kind of braggadocious a little bit, some people thought, is you were trying to also communicate, I'm assuming, to the superstar talents. Like, listen, if you're out there and you're in a team that's just good now, come play with me. I'll pay you the top money. I'll put you in the best facility. Like, can you give me some thoughts on that? Because obviously it's one of the most misunderstood and maligned tweets I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a whole lot I could definitely say about that. First and foremost, you know, a lot of times these things, when you shoot quickly like that, you look back in hindsight being 2020, you think, oh, I could have worded it differently or whatever. I have no regrets with that tweet. The one thing I do wish I had done was maybe wait just a little longer. Right after we were done, I had a meeting with my players outside the venue, and I told them, hey, I'm about to drop bomb. Here's the deal, and I wanted to tell you first. And you know, here's what's coming, and we had that conversation. And then I just dropped it. Like, while I was watching the last map, I was drafting that tweet because it was obviously that we were getting, you know, just wrecked. And I just come to a point. I think it's always important that a leader has a mix of patience, a mix of vision, but they know when to blow stuff up. And for me, you know, once we got our investment, we could have just dropped all our players and started this whole big money acquisition and everything. But at Complexity, we tend to try to do things differently. We like to develop people. We like to invest in systems and infrastructure that grow people. We like to be like, hey, we see your potential. Now let us come alongside you and build that potential, and let's create something really kick-ass together. And that's kind of become our mantra slowly over the years. So we stuck with that team, and we tweaked it and brought in Stan, brought in Shaz, great guys. That we just weren't getting to where we wanted to go. And the frustration was growing, and it was growing, and it was growing. And we'd given second chances and third chances and fourth chances. And we were really honest with the players during this time. Like, here's our expectations. And here's where we need to get together. It wasn't just like out of left field, like, oh, wow, we had no idea there might be major changes if we bomb at this event. And that being said, you know, far more than others understand that, it's kind of like an iceberg in esports. The fans see the kind of the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more going on beneath the waves. And I was under a tremendous amount of pressure from multiple factors. One being timing. I knew that Flashpoint was coming, didn't know the name yet. I knew that Blast was going to be doing some really cool stuff, and ESL was going to be doing some real cool stuff. And I could no longer have a team that was borderline as a squad irrelevant, that wasn't making waves, that wasn't competitive, and that had been given its last chance. So I'm like, I've got a short amount of time here. Not only do I need to, I've said this in other interviews, draw a line in the sand, be like, enough is enough. It's my job to make this call. I needed to broadcast it out there from the top of the mountain, like you said. Hey, we are for real. We do have a really badass training facility. I'm willing to pay your buyouts. We're a pretty cool org to come work for, and let's get after it. I didn't see that I had enough time to do it behind the scenes and kind of make those calls and do that lobbying and do that recruiting. It was something to where I felt I needed to do it loudly and publicly and firmly to say, hey, this isn't good enough. This isn't what complexity stands for. Our goals and our vision is much larger. Of course, everyone in the scene is like, hey, we want to win titles. We want to win a major or whatever. But how many actually go out there and do what it takes to get there? And it was just a moment where I took my flag as the leader of this company and just slammed it in the ground, said, this isn't good enough. We're going to blow it up and we're going to start over. And I want everybody to know. And I want the public to hold me accountable. It wasn't just a little tweet like, we're going to do better. We're going to work harder. It's like, no. The Juggernaut thing, which became a meme. It was just like in the moment, I'm like, what do I want to do? What am I trying to build? I want to build a Juggernaut. I want to build something that's so exciting, that could be so powerful, and that could be so inspirational and so successful. That word just popped in my head. I said, let's build a Juggernaut. And when you do something like that and you stick your neck out that far, it motivates you even more, because now the public is aware. You've put yourself out there. You've taken a leap.
There's no way back, right? You burned the ships.
You're taking a huge leap.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly right. You have torched the ship. It is sink or swim. There are no life buoys, because you just put it all out there. And that's exactly what I intended to do, not only for myself, but for my company. I wanted the leagues that were forming to know, hey, I'm not screwing around here. This is not good enough. So there was a lot of things underneath the surface going on that also kind of played into the wording and the timing, and of course just natural frustration where I'm competitive as hell, and I genuinely try to be cool to my players, but at the end of the day, we want to win.
Well, this is something where, again, we can now, listen, it's not The Last Dance, but we can now skip all the way back to like 2003 or 2004, and people will now find where history echoes. But here's the reason why. One of my favorite quotes of all time, it was supposedly from the Hopi Indians, was they said that your character is your destiny. Because the idea is, who you are as a person will inform the choices you make, is where you will be. It doesn't mean, you'll be where you want to be necessarily, but that's what will take you there, for good or for ill. So what people might not know is, listen, people think it's funny, the Juggernaut meme. I tell you what, it's getting a lot less funny. It's becoming like cool branding now. But I'll tell you what, people won't know this. If you go back in time, and I'll have some content on this coming up, Jason did this back in, I think it was 2004. And what he did was, at the time, you had way worse. You had a similar set of players, actually. You had like some okay, like ex-pros who were like, some of them were sort of like, maybe they were borderline decent. This is before the main complexity squad. And you'd load them in, just with money and the fact that, you could pay them at a time where they wouldn't have had an opportunity to be in a top team. And you literally went on a show. It was back when Midway and those guys used to do a podcast. And you went on this show. And this is before you'd signed all the big players, before you had the success. It was maybe like 6 months, 9 months, a year before. And you went on this show, and at the time, you did the equivalent of this tweet. You said, like, Team 3D is, you were basically implied, like, you know, they're not sort of representing North America the best, because if people don't know, they had like an all-star team, but then they would just kind of like, it looked like some of them were mailing it in for the check. Some of them were just playing, and you couldn't kick them because they were all huge names. So you made these points, right, that you were going to build the team that could actually like be the best. You even said something like you were going to be better than 3D, and at the time, that was unthinkable. Like, you weren't even in the same division that 3D played in. So at the time, everyone mocked you. Everyone said, I'm sure I did myself back then, mate. I thought, who the hell is this loudmouth coming in? You haven't done anything yet, mate. You haven't got any players. What are you talking about? But then what they don't realise is that was the same thing. It was a mission statement. And part of the reason you did it, as far as I can tell, maybe some of this is something you learned after the fact, was it had the same effect. You put the signal out there, and the players who were the guys where they were like, you know what, I'm much better than people know, but my last team, I didn't get the right breaks. I'm not even in that team anymore, but I can prove it. Those people, you attract like the Mavericks to you when you do that, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, of course, there's a lot that goes into the rationale behind those things. One, like we said, is you burn the lifeboat. Two, there's marketing involved. Like, you want to put it out there like, hey, we're coming and get ready. And you want to attract the players. You want to let them know, hey, you got a group over here that really wants to win, that's going to pay fair wages and take care of you. I mean, you could try to sell that behind closed doors, but the players know once you go on record like that, it's like, hey, this dude's back's against the wall. He's going to have to live up to it, you know. And much like last fall with the Juggernaut tweet, you know, that people laughed and people mocked, and a complexity redemption. One of the
that's why it's called that. If people don't know, that's what it's called, redemption. You have to redeem. We got
so roasted and so made fun of and so laughed at, and then we had this breakthrough event at CPL Winter 2004, and we finished like 4th or whatever. But at that time, that was such a colossal jump. It was just like shocking to people, and we'd brought Daniel Frome along and filmed it. And that's why it was called redemption. It's just like, we said we're going to do it. You laughed at us. You mocked us. We put quotes from Gottfried forums and things in there. And it's just like, this is our redemption. You know, Duncan, on one level, I like it when people doubt me.
It's a bit of fuel, right?
Yeah. I like it when people laugh at me. You know, it shows me I'm onto something, because the masses are almost always collectively wrong. So, you know, there's so much bandwagoning going on and so many different things these days. But you got to be careful of just following the herd.
Yes.
If I'm doing something and everyone's like, "Oh, you're so great. Oh, dude, you're so smart," whatever, I almost step back and be like, "Wait a minute." You know,
of course,
it's like, I got to reanalyze this. And last fall, when I was being really beat up and made fun of and laughed at, a lot of, you know, friends came to me. It was very kind, and people inside Complexity, and they're just like, "You all right, man? Like, holy shit, you're getting 1,000 arrows in the back a day." And I'm like, no, this is like the old days. We're about to open up a can of whoop ass. This feels great. Feel alive. So it was good. And of course, you always take that risk. Like, I don't think people, you do, but I think a lot of the newer fans don't understand how much of my life I've invested in this space, how much of my family's life and our fortunes I've invested.
You put an entire business into it, basically.
Right. So when I've got 17 years in now. So you generally, when you get to be my age and you get to be this far along in your path, the human inclination is to play it really safe, to be really conservative. Like, you've come this far, don't take chances, don't stick your neck out. And I don't want to settle into that mediocrity. I intentionally put my entire career's reputation on the line. I intentionally put everything I've worked for out on the line. Like,
what do you think would have happened if it had all failed?
Yeah, that's a great question. If we completely failed, I knew Complexity would live on. Complexity, you know, it would do some damage, but it'd be short-term damage. Jason Lake would be the brunt of a joke for the rest of my life. I risked 17 years of my career, and that's why last weekend, not that we've won a major or anything, but it just kind of proved that we're capable of being the juggernaut that I always hoped we could be. It might be a teenage juggernaut. We're still growing, right?
Sure.
But we show people like, hey, check it out. Like, we're for real. And then I was in the Zoom chat, And the blast production did a fantastic job, by the way. And I was just overwhelmed, and I was crying, and that went all over the internet. I probably would have turned off the camera when I started crying, but I'm like, I'm in the Zoom chat with some hardcore Complexity fans. I don't care if they see me crying. And somehow the production zoomed in on my little square in that Zoom. I didn't even know you could do that. I'm a tech noob. But the reason I was crying, the reason I was so overwhelmed is people don't understand how far I stuck my neck out. And not only publicly, and not only risked my reputation in the 17 years I've kind of invested in it, specifically in Counter-Strike 2, which is, my bread and butter. I stuck my neck out internally. I have to go to a board of directors and ask for millions of dollars and explain why it's a good investment. And my board is full of great people, but they are successful for a reason. And they expect results. And they said, what rank are you going to achieve with this team, say, by next summer? And I said, I'll get this team to top 10. And they said, can you guarantee that? I'm like, it's a sport. You can't guarantee anything, but pretty much bet my ass on it. And that event, ironically, is, what got us to number 10 for now. The rankings are really volatile right now.
Yeah,
and then number 3 in ESL. I've done a pretty good job over the years of learning to deal with stress, and I work really hard to try to handle the stress. But I just felt, for many reasons, frustrations, and just we needed a breakthrough moment, that tweet was going to be my stand. I was going to die on that mountain. And if I couldn't build a competitive, compelling Counter-Strike team and get it to top 10 in 9 months or whatever it was, then I should go down. And the board should replace me, and I should be mocked. I put myself out there. So when people are like, can't believe you're flying around the world, you're meeting with these players, you're working so hard, you're doing all this yourself. It's like, you're damn right. I jumped off the lifeboat and torched it. And of course, it wasn't all me by myself. I have a great team with me that were just as devoted and just as dedicated. And a lot of people are doing a lot of analytics and a lot of studying and a lot of lobbying and recruiting and homework and research. But it's my job to be out front. It's my job to be the face, to take the arrows, and it's my job to issue the rallying cry. And that's what I did. And God bless Blame F and our team. They've worked unbelievably hard and had some success. We're not crowning ourselves best team in the world, but to find international success, even online, while in Europe against some of the to play the game, I think it was a bit of redemption. So it felt really good, and that's particularly why I was emotional. I've always been the kind of person where I have a really hard time doing anything like 70%. Like I have to do it 100%, or that's just kind of how I'm built. So when you give it that much for so long, and you're so stressed out, and you try to pour all that you are into something, and you're betting on yourself and the people that in your team, and then to have that success, it's just this overwhelming sense of emotion. It feels so. It's just, I don't know. It's really hard to put words on it. I'm so proud of everyone that worked so hard in Complexity to get this team, and then how hard the players worked to improve this team, and Matt, our manager, and Jamie, our coach, and our analysts, and our sports coach. Like, so many people worked so hard for this moment in the sun. And it was great. I know the next time we lose and people are losing bets on us or whatever, I'll get 1,000 hate messages.
Of course.
But for that one day, man, for that one day, it's actually a few hours. you get to really, really just live in that joy. And then you get back to work, and we had to play the next day on Monday. So.
Right, let's talk then about, let's say, if you put it on like a 9-month track, let's talk about what the first 4 months or so was like. Because if people don't remember, one thing that's interesting about this team is it was put together piece by piece. Like, people might forget, you even went to events towards the end of the year with some of the first players you brought in, but when you didn't have Config, you didn't have Poison yet, you were still putting the squad together. So when you made this tweet, and you said this very bold statement. And the thing is, the way that's phrased, like I say, you're sort of basically saying, listen, I'm just going to use example names here. You're almost saying to like Nikos of the world, listen, come fuck with me. You want to be in the number one team? Maybe your team now is good, but isn't what you want it to be. I'll make you the highest paid. If you're the best, come with me. So the big problem is it set that expectation out there that the first name out the gate is going to be monster. And so we'll get to it in a minute to like who you signed, etc. But I want to talk about this aspect, because another thing we have to shade in, because I love my historical context, is right before this major, you'd also let Stanislaw go. He went to NRG. They come top 4 at the major, look incredible, and go on to literally be number 2 team in the world with EG, winning, beating Astralis. So already, if someone was a Cole fan, they're like, I don't know about this dude. Like, our team that we're putting together is another piecemeal team. Remember, Cloud9 failed with that approach. They're seeing the guy you used to have is winning championships. And then, as you put together the squad initially, people might know they were initially, this is why it's funny if everyone's going to call them onliners now. They were terrible online. They couldn't beat anyone online for the first 2 months. Bad. Yeah, so the joke
Our
is...
team is better on land, straight up.
Of course, if people don't remember, you guys failed something crazy, like 3 or 4 chances to originally qualify for the major. It was like the last one where you got in. This is when we had the old system to qualify. What were those first few months like, where you're trying to put the team together, and obviously nothing's working? Like, in those early months, listen, as much as you say all these great things now about like your vision and stuff like that, there's got to be the days you question it, right? Or if you wonder, like, I'm putting a lot on the line if I keep going down this path, right?
Yeah, it was very difficult. I remember speaking about those online tournaments after we got upset, I guess you could say, by Cloud9 online, and they like to meme people and make fun of people, and they tweeted some Juggernaut meme at me right after we lost. When you're just at your lowest point. Of
course.
I just about threw my office chair out the pane glass window of my office. So I took a deep breath and I realized, this is kind of their MO, and some teams like to do memes or whatever, so you can't let it get under your skin. But those first few months, it started with, I guess the closest analogy is like a Moneyball breakdown. We said, we're willing to go after anyone in the world, but let's not just go after the obvious big names. Now, I spoke to some of the biggest names in the world, and we're talking the Cold Zeras. I had a Vitality. What's it going to cost me to get Zywoo?
Yes.
I'm talking about the biggest names, because you gotta start with the obvious candidates, and sometimes they're not available. Sometimes they might not be interested, but you talk to all these people. And then we kind of started moneyballing it. Soren, our GM, Josh, our assistant GM, Matt, our manager. I had help from some connections in Europe I was meeting with 2 or 3 times a day to gather intel, to gather options, to break down statistics. We were intentionally trying to build a squad that had the requisite experience, but leaned very much on the younger side, because our thought process was, if we're going to go through this much work to build this team and spend this much money, let's try to build a team that could be good for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Whereas if you go after some of these great players that are legends, that are fantastic in their late 20s, early 30s, getting 5 years out production out of them might be asking a little too much. And then I just started hitting the phones. I have a lot of good friends in this business, and their friendships mean the world to me. And having those friendships and those connections makes me look smarter than I really am. And I lean on good people that are incredibly good at what they do. And then, like when we won last week, everyone's like, oh, he's a genius or whatever. It's like, no. The truth is, and I use this analogy in an AMA I did on my new YouTube channel the other day. I'm just the conductor. Like, I'm the guy standing in front of the orchestra. If complexity is the orchestra, I lead. I recruit. If the trombonist is fighting with the bass drum guy, I come in and I fix it. If someone is sick, I get them well. I try to build the best orchestra I possibly can, and then I try to play beautiful music. So when people are like, oh, Jason Lake, it's like, the truth, the honest to God's truth is, I'm not as smart as you think. I'm not as clever as some people might want to give me credit for. If I've done anything clever, if I've done anything smart in this business, it's hire good people and build relationships with people that are even not in your company that you can turn to and be like, can you help me? Like, do you have any ideas? I think I know I've reached out to you on a couple occasions over the years, like, hey, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? Because you know your shit and you know this scene and you know stories that the average people don't. And I'm not afraid to ask people for help. So we started down this process and started, we had charts and walls full of information and we're pounding the phones. But as you know, sometimes phones just don't get it done. Skype, Google, Discord, or whatever. There's something powerful about sitting in a room and breaking bread and, having a coffee with people. So
looking them dead in the eye, right?
Hit the road, 100%. It's hard to really share how serious you are and how passionate you are over the internet or over a telephone. You need to be in the room. They can feel your energy. Like you give off this energy. So I hit the road, man. I put in so many miles last year. It was crazy. And, but I wouldn't do it any other way. I'd intentionally put my back against the wall and the back of my organization against the wall. And now it was time to put up or shut up. And, we got one here and one there. And the thing is, like, as you understand, when you're building a roster, it's like a machine. So if you get this part and put it in, okay, great. Then I need this part. But if the first part falls through, crap. Well, now part number 2 doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So you're assembling this thing that needs to work like a fine clock. But if the first piece backs out or whatever, you're like, shit, now I need a different piece there. So that means this guy doesn't work. So it was always moving and sometimes you feel bad because you got the number 2 player that would fit perfectly with this guy, but you need the number 1. He's like, hey, I'm ready. What do you want to do? Are we going or whatever? And you're like, just give me a little more time because if you don't sign number 1, you can't sign number 2 because you would lose what you're trying to build. So yeah, it was stressful. We talked about offline a little bit. I do think I'm decent at handling stress. I think a lot about my diet, vitamins. I'm in the gym at least twice a week. Try to monitor my sleep. But that last fall, I hit the wall, man. And screw it out. I'll share it. If you want to go all in on something in life, you got to go all in. I got to the point last year.
In every sense, right?
Yeah, I was just at the end of myself, and it's unbelievably rare that I get to points like that. And I finally, it was manifesting in physical symptoms, having a hard time breathing, and this, I hate the words nervous breakdown, but I feel like I was dancing with those words. So I went to a doctor during this process, and the doctor said, "Listen." Well, I actually went to 3 doctors in one day because they're like, "Okay, you got to go to this person," and I consulted with 3 doctors one afternoon. And their combined conclusion was you need 60 to 90 days off. You need to take a sabbatical, to which I kind of chuckled. I'm like, you don't understand esports.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So I said, thank you for the advice and went back to work. And 2 days later, I flew to Helsinki. So that was my sabbatical. And, it's well known. I think very highly of Alexi B. Great player, super smart, very nice guy. And we were having a conversation about the potential of coming to play in America. And like I said earlier, sometimes these conversations, we're spinning our wheels and just spinning our wheels. Like I knew I was at the point where I had to go and sit in the room with him or this was just not happening. And I'd been talking to Blame F at the same time. And I'm like, I'm going to get this done and I'm going to get it done myself. So I was actually at the gym and I was walking to the office on the phone with Alexi. And we actually had our staff. We made this cool poster. We got a bunch of people in our office. And we sent him this picture. Alexi B, is all like, hey, come play for Complexity. We really want you to be here. And I was like sending it to him. And I just looked at our logistics director and I said, I'm going to Helsinki. He's like, what? I'm like, can you follow me home? I'm going to take a shower quick. I'm going to throw some stuff in a bag. And then will you drive me to the airport? Like the flight's in like an hour and a half. Like we got to hightail it. And literally that morning I woke up having no idea I was going to Europe. And I just decided like, I got to get this done. And this is the only way I felt I could get it done. So I went over and had great talks with him, bought a one-way ticket. I didn't know how long I was going to be in Europe or what it was going to take. And then I flew from Helsinki to Copenhagen, had great talks with Blame F. At the same time, I'm, on the phone with Poison almost every day from around the world. And you mentioned this actually on Reddit the other day. He was also in negotiations with OG.
Yes.
And I was...
now you're battling other people as well.
I was battling. I was 100% battling. And so I got home and, I try to teach my son the business. I'm his dad. I try to teach my son about life. And I said, listen, I'm going to put this on speakerphone. I'm calling this player up, Poison. We really need him. I think he's going to be sensational. I want you to hear how I do it. So we're on the call with him. And he's like, look, I love the offer. I love it. The headquarters looks unbelievable. You've been great. Complexity looks great. But OG's offer is great. And I think I'll stay in Europe. It's easier. It's closer to home. And I just said, Valentine, I said, can I just say something respectfully and just be really open with you? And he said, yeah, what is it? I said, I'm not going to let you turn down my offer. And he's like, what does that mean? And I said, I'm going to make this offer so good, like you would need to be brain dead to turn down my offer. And I said, that's how badly.
It's a good line. It's a pretty good line.
I said, that's how badly we want you at Complexity. And I did, and he did, and here we are today. So, part of me absolutely loves the hunt, the chase, the lobbying, the recruiting, the sitting with players, sharing your dream, sharing your passion, explaining the plan. Here's how we're going to do it, and da-da-da-da. But it's so damn stressful, right? It kind of takes a little bit of the enjoyment away because you're like, this could go so well. Like, I see it. I could see it so clear. My staff, we see it. We built a plan. We could do it. But if we don't put the pieces in together, it won't happen. So you're loving it and you're stressed out and your doctor's telling you to take 3 months off and you're hopping on planes to Europe. It's like, man, I'm doing a video probably tomorrow because I get asked so often, how do you get a job in esports? So I'm going to do a video on that. And part of the video is going to be warning people. Like, if you're just looking for a paycheck, if you're just a 9 to 5, like, I'm not really into work, but I need to pay my bills and I like buying video games and beer. Like, don't come to this space because you're going to be devoured by people who work 100 hours a week that live and die for esports, live and die for their brands, are super passionate about it. And that's just the way it's rolled. That's the way it's rolled for many, many years at Complexity. And as long as I'm here, I think that's the way it'll continue to roll.
Now, in this story, again, before the success, this is another detail. Listen, one of the things this is what people probably wouldn't understand. The reason I read Reddit, I mean, I'll admit, I nowadays don't really read like comments about me and threads about me because they just tend to be negative-y. But what I do is the reason I always keep a track of like what the community's talking about on Reddit is I want to have a sense for like which way is the wind blowing, like where are people sitting on this one, who's got stock, which is the low stock, who do they think should be fired, who shouldn't? Because I tell you what,
100%.
after the fact, a lot of those people, my joke is whenever people say you can't do something and you do it, you never hear from them again. They disappear under a rock because here's the spoiler. They're the guy who it's like the Homer Simpson meme where he backs into that hedge and he comes back out. They just tell you later. They always knew. So Blame F is the ultimate example of this, mate. Because I remember when Blame F was in Heroic before, he looked like a player who had potential. They'd have some upsets, he'd carry. But I tell you what, as much as people now are going to claim they always knew he was good, there are many players like that. There are a lot of players in bad teams who look like, you put the right team around him, he could be something. But yeah, it's not a guarantee. So that, like I say, the real chronology that people need to understand here is, if you've made the statement you make, and then people know you've gone and made these big offers, the reports are there, Alexi B, you're talking to other players. If they know you're going for the big names, then if the first name out of the gate is a guy that already sounds like a gamble, they're going to think, well, and as people did, I'll tell you right now, well, if that's the first name, if that's the number one piece, as you just said, what's this team? Like, God, if that's the number one piece, what's the number 4 piece? And I'll tell you what, as much as it's listen, it hadn't all succeeded yet. It was still on the process. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people would tell you right now that number one piece is looking amazing, mate. That is a number one piece that everyone's hailing as like the next great player, going to be a top 10 player this year. Everything, stats are there, dominating in the game, the highlights, every single thing's there. So what was it about this guy that made it so that, listen, after you went for the cold zeros of the world, which, that's like, that feels like as much of a slam dunk as you can if you come up with cold zero. So if you make a gamble on this guy as your number one piece, what were you seeing in him? What convinced you this was the guy to go in all in on?
Yeah, and also I just got to take a moment to say Ben is one of just the most amazing people. Perfect example of this the other day is people are like, why, when you win, because they have the video cams on them, why do you always jump out of your chair and run out of the room? Because people are joking, he must really have to go to the restroom or something. Right. And he tweeted, he's like, no, I'm going to hug my mom. She's watching in the next room. That's Ben, man. That's Ben. He's like this giant hulking dude with this huge heart, and he's such a good person. And he has a work ethic that really drew me to him. Like, this guy, it's unbelievable how hard he works. I've had to have sit downs with him just to be like, look, man, I get it. And I love it. But you've also got 4 other people on your team plus the staff. And not everyone can work the hours you do. And this is a marathon, not a sprint. And if you keep working them 14 hours a day, you're going to burn them all out. And then what you've built will crumble anyway. We need to do this with wisdom and discernment and make sure that we're working with the players we've got. And I'm trying to help him learn to the best of my ability to become not only a fragger, not only a shot caller, but a leader. And some, he's a natural leader for sure, but things like that need to be honed. They need to be nurtured. They need to grow. They need to be tended to. And I'm like, yeah, you have my authority and the company's authority to grind these guys into the ground because that's your normal work ethic, but that's not wise. Lead them, motivate them, listen to them, work around them. Maybe one day they just needed a break in the middle of the afternoon for no reason, which is something Ben would never do because he's just a beast. But you're now the leader and you have to lead. Right after that tweet, couple hours later, I was already back in the hotel room with Matt Dickens, Warden, our GM, and Jamie, our coach, already on the hunt. We're talking hour and a half, 2 hours after that tweet, we'd started the hunt. And Jamie came and said, listen, I've talked to X and I've talked to Y. I'm not going to throw out our names, but he's like, this Blame F guy, he's going to be the next superstar. He can in-game lead, and he's just a beast. And so I started asking around to my European contacts, Blame F, what do you think? And I had some people be like, he's okay, he's unheroic, but some of the people whose judgment I kind of trust more, like, dude, it might take some time, but he's going to be a superstar. So we were already on, I don't remember if it was voice or chat. I think it was just text chat with Blame F the day of that tweet. And that started that conversation. We didn't hesitate. We didn't mess around. And, like you said earlier, when people are like, Blame F, like, what the hell? I was just sitting back laughing because I'm like, the more they mock this move, the more they laugh at this announcement, the better we're going to look. We're going to look like geniuses. Like, this guy's going to grow into this superstar. And because he's worked so hard, he's so smart, and he's so dedicated, he's already so talented. And then people are going to look at me and be like, oh, Jason Lake's a genius. Like, no. You were all just wrong in the beginning. Blame has been an up-and-coming superstar. And I think a lot of the pro players, like a lot of the fans might have laughed. Been like, what the hell? This is the Juggernaut? But a lot of the pro players that really know, they're like, yeah, this dude's for real, and he's on the come up. So yeah, I feel we got really fortunate with that. Like he shared, on his stream the other day how we met. And it was funny because he's like, he didn't even ask permission. He just said he's coming to visit me. Well, we've been talking before that. Sure. And I'm like, hey man, I'm coming there. I'm going to be in Copenhagen. I hope you meet with me. And I already got permission, from his team and his owners. And then he verified that I had permission. So the way he kind of explained it was just like, yeah, this dude showed up. It's like, you need to meet with me. But, no, I'll never forget. I still have some pictures of my phone when we first hung out, and those are going to be special. Maybe someday I'll publish them.
Now, since you said like you had to moneyball it, because obviously, like I said, the slam dunks, like the number one free agent, the number one person, they're not available sometimes. Or more importantly, and I think this is definitely a factor, they just won't join as number one. And the problem is, you need them as number one. So the issue is, they'll join the team that's already established with the players they think are already number one. So that's the big issue. Is a lot of people won't take that gamble.
Yeah, that's 100%. That's a really good observation. That is the hardest part of building a team a lot of times is good players at the top only want to play with good players at the top. Like they've worked their asses off to get to where they are in their career. Like they've been on startups. They've been on the underdogs battling. It's like, I don't want to be in the underdogs anymore. I just want to go out and contend for top 3 at every major and kick everyone's ass. And they've earned that. I get that. And that it's a chicken before the egg problem, right? The cart before the horse. But it's like, how can you get top players if you don't yet have top players? And I evaluated at one point buying all of FaZe. Not saying they would have, but those you
got to think about it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. The analysis was done and conversations with different teams were had. I always wanted to make sure we built our own thing. But like you said, if you don't have a top name yet, it's really hard to attract people. Signing bonuses help, but don't always work. And that's another reason I feel, that the team's hard work that paid off last weekend is so important to our brand. It's so important to the reputation of Complexity Counter-Strike, is because now people know we are for real. We can build champions. We do field winners, and it's a snowball effect. You look at some of the teams, the Liquids and some of the other ones that have been successful for a while, they've got common traits. They've got solid finances. They've got great management, all the way from the top to like the divisional managers. And they've had success, and success draws people that want to be successful. And it's a snowball effect to where you see a lot of these same brands. People forget, I think, when FaZe first came in, like they hadn't ever been in Counter-Strike, and they had to stroke some really large checks.
Yes.
To buy into this game. And then once they're FaZe Counter-Strike and they're really good, they've got these star players, recruiting the other star players
becomes magnetic, right? Yeah, exactly.
It's not nearly as hard because, like I said, the best want to play with the best, and they don't want to do a rebuild project again. And that was a huge hurdle for us to get over.
Now, if you say, like I set up there, that you were doing a Moneyball approach, I should probably do a video or an article on this concept, actually. I feel it's so misunderstood. Here's what you do. Yes, you look for the up-and-coming star, so you got one of those. You already obviously had one in Obo that could be in the future. But I'll tell you what you also need to do. Because you're trying to make your minimum amount of money go to the maximum lengths, because the problem is, like, if people don't understand the art of GMing, you don't just overpay for every player. If you do that, that's not a good strategy either. Like, you also have to get the guy on the right deal for you, as in you're valuing where he's going to be. So what you also need to do, and this is a classic move people don't understand, there's so many people in this business who they themselves are like a fan. They just go whichever way the wind blows. And if this player's losing now, like a great example would be like Shocks on Vitality. Every player and coach and stuff would tell you, nah, he's done, he's out, like, tell you what, they're not laughing now. Now he's back again all of a sudden, and you know what? You bet against greatness, and you thought he was dead and buried, and you put the last nail in too soon, guys, and he's busted out. So what I would say is this, what you have to be able to do if you want your approach, you've also got to have a few players that you're going to redeem. You got to have the player where
config,
that's what I'm about to lead to. You have to have the player where everyone else thinks he's done. That's why you can get him now. That's why he's available. But you're investing, if this guy can get to where he could be, I'm going to have a player that's way more worth it. So if people don't know, if everyone remembers, before he signed with your team was when I wrote an article where basically I wasn't trying to make this specific move happen, but I was trying to send a signal to, by the way, those are the articles are basically, here's the spoiler, I write them to the player. It's an open letter to the player. I was seeing someone who had an amazing talent. Everyone who's ever been involved in this guy's career says, like, this guy basically should be what Astralis are. But the problem is, didn't have the work ethic Astralis did. Didn't maybe have the same frame of mind the Astralis players did. In fact, I'd even heard stories, extracurricular things were out of whack. Maybe he wasn't practicing as hard. Maybe he's messing around with other things you shouldn't be messing around with if you want to be a top pro in a game where you've got to be very diligent. And so when I wrote that article and then he came out with his tweet, which, listen, that probably surprised people in itself. A lot of people probably thought he'd just come back at my head and be like, what do you know? If you notice, he basically just took it on the chin and was like, you're right. I'm sort of wasting my talent. I'm going to get back together. I'm going to get my skills back up. And here's the thing. People might not know this. after this article, you messaged me and basically said, is it legit? Like, is he just saying that just to sound cool, you know, and basically take some of the damage got? Or is he real? And I told you, because I've talked to Config privately in the past, I know when people are selling me a line of BS, and actually I genuinely think it, like, not that it got to him, but like it something inside him already felt that way, and it lit the touch paper, as it were. And so this is the player where, listen, he wasn't even actually at his peak when you guys came back and you did the blast offline period. But recently, these last few months, yes, Blame F, but Config as well. He's really come online now. Now it's paying the dividends, right? So this was a gamble to pick this player up. He just spent, he'd been wilding away for a while.
Yeah, you know, and I also commented on this in my AMA the other day, that your interaction, your article and his response to it shot him up our list. You know, we had all kinds of stats. Like my GM could come in and be like, do you know Rush wins entries X% of the time? And every time he does, they win the round X% of the time. It was like a statistics, you know, PhD class in our office, how deeply we studied these players. And we knew Config was great. He's available. He's definitely on our list. You put out that article. I kind of sat back and I wanted to see how he'd reply. My expectation was, F you, you know, you don't know me, and Thorin, you know, get off my back.
Who are your sources? Of course.
Yeah, and that's what I expected. And he totally surprised me. And he was just like, you know what? Like, you're right. I have squandered these opportunities. I haven't worked hard enough. I see that, and I'm going to do something about that. And his name on our list just went right to the top. I'm like, that's the guy. That's my guy. Like, he took criticism and he looked inside, and it was introspective, and said, yeah, I haven't taken advantage. It's on me. I'm going to own it, and I'm going to fix it. That shows maturity. That shows wisdom. That shows a person that can look and analyze, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? It's like, I want to work with that guy. And he shot way up to the top of our list because of your interaction with him. And that's why I hit you up. And I didn't know him personally. I'd met him a couple times, but I didn't know him well. That's why I hit you up. I'm like, you think he's legit, or is this like, is he being, you know, sarcastic, or, you know, is he really being earnest with this? And he was, and you were right. And he's been nothing but phenomenal. I'd heard problems of being difficult to work with, and, you know, maybe he's toxic, and we had these concerns, and I spent the time, and I was just like, listen, I don't want to be a jerk, but here's how things roll in complexity. Like, I got a zero tolerance for bullshit. Like, if you're going to come in here, here's how hard we're going to work. Here's how we go about our business. Here's about our professionalism. And if you're not on board with that, like, I won't waste any more of your time. And he was like, yeah, like, I want to do it. I believe in it. I know I can do it. And he's been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. He's been a team leader. He works really, really hard. He's easy to work with. And man, when that guy is on, he's one of the best players in the world. He just runs in a bomb site to pop, pop, pop. It's just like, how the hell did he do that? And I keep telling him, we talk on WhatsApp, you know, I'm just like, you got to believe in yourself, man. Keep working hard, keep grinding, because you are one of the best players in the world. Establishing that consistency now and being able to really deliver in 90% of the matches at a high level, instead of, I'm just making up numbers,
Sure.
60, 70%. Like, that's what's going to take us to a major. We're going to hoist a major trophy, and it's going to be hugely dependent on you realizing your potential. All the way back to that article by Thorin. Don't forget that. Fuel the fire. Get after it. Get passionate. Don't get apathetic. Let's go do big shit. And he's doing it, man. He's doing it. Like, I can't speak to what he's going to be doing in 6 months. I don't know the future, but right now I can report with great joy that he's fantastic to work with. He's busting his butt, and he's kicking ass.
Now, the other player that we would be remiss to not mention who redeemed himself was Rush. And so if people don't realize, listen, I will tell you right now, this was the player I didn't have a read would turn his career around. Because I'll tell you what, Jason, when someone's had years of toiling away and having issues and not being able to get back to the top, that's usually when I'm like, enough's enough, you know, like something, whatever it was it your motivation, was it your skill, whatever it is at this point, I've seen the outcome, you know, like, It's not a brief thing. You've had a lot of trouble. And I know behind the scenes, there wasn't that many offers for a guy like this. He could have been one of these guys now announcing he's going to Valorant. Like, that really could have been the world that Rush would be in. And I tell you what, the moment that I knew that this move has started to pay off was the offline phase of Blast. Because if people forget, he was one of the guys where, if you looked at his stats before on LAN and his stats at this LAN, he went up the charts, mate. He was like one of the higher rated players. So what was it about this player? Like, why be the last chance saloon for Rush in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, we thought we had a good read on him statistically. We thought we had a reasonable read on his personality as far as like being reliable, professional, not going to be toxic, not going to be problematic. What I spent a lot of time with him chatting, and what I was really trying to get a read on is this guy at the twilight of his career just hunting a paycheck? Because that happens frequently. Or is he really hungry? Is he wallowing away unhappily playing in his current rosters, and that's hurting the potential we've seen before in Optic and Cloud9? Or is he just like out drinking beers on the beach and just like, hey, how am I going to pay my next credit card bill? And that was something I had to try to read. That was something, to be honest, it took me a lot of time, because he was assuring me like, no, I'm for real. I want to.
They all say that though, of course.
Yeah,
sure.
And it's like, dude, all respect. Like, I think you're a great guy. You have had a great career. I'm just not interested in people looking for paychecks in the twilight of their career. And while we were, like I talked about earlier, building this machine and fitting in the parts, like he fit into several different scenarios. We saw him really as a glue player that could do entry, that could do the dirty work, that had the experience and the maturity and the wisdom to be able to build the younger players, the Obos, the Poisons, to be that kind of reliable guy in your team that's been there, seen that, done it, surfed it, skied it, as long as he had the fire in his belly. That was the only thing I couldn't quite get. And once I became convinced that he had the fire in his belly, I knew he would do big things. And by big things, I don't necessarily mean topping the scoreboard and going off on ADR or whatever. Sometimes, as you know, it's not the guys necessarily that are top of the frag leaderboard that actually won the game. It was this critical flash. It was the perfect smoke. It was this great call out in the game. It was great comms. The glue. It was the things that you don't necessarily see with a quick review of the game. We knew we had it in him. And, can't say enough good things about him. He got stuck in, I say stuck not in a negative way, but, kind of in Europe because of this whole quarantine situation for months. And he had, Obo with him, who was 16, turned 17 today, actually. Happy birthday, Obo. And he, we had assistant manager Josh with him and a cameraman, Shondo. But I mean, Rush is like taking him under his wing, but like, hey man, I got you. Let me show you how this game is played. Let me, be there for when you need someone to yell at or a shoulder to cry on. Like, it's not easy to be 16 years old, stuck in a foreign country during a global pandemic. And Rush is a guy right there in the mix. Like, I'm going to make you better. I'm going to show you how to be a champion. And how can you quantify contributions like that? Like, how can you go in a forum and be like, oh, Rush sucks, and they should replace Rush and da-da-da-da. It's like, it take me a half an hour to answer that Reddit comment on why, hey, this guy is valuable. This guy is contributing to whatever success we have in so many intangible ways. It would take hours to just really break it down. I'm really glad that we went his direction. I'm glad he went ours. And again, you can't predict the future. You never know what's going to happen. But I think that was another fortuitous choice, and I'm proud of our team for making it, and thankful for Rush for joining us.
Right, as we come to the end of the interview now, what I thought I'd do is I'll give you the floor for the final words. But what I want to know about is this. Obviously, just qualifying for the spring finals, the way you did offline, if people don't know, that was a group where on paper, you should never have been able to get out. All three teams should have beaten you and were some of the best teams in the world. Then obviously now to win the spring finals, whether it's online or not, like, it's irrelevant. If people don't know, Complexity's played like 100 plus maps in the last 3 months. They haven't just been sat around and just tripped over and won this thing. Like, they've been grinding, playing tier 3 teams in some of those online cups. I've looked at some of the opposition. Like, you guys had no ego. You were going and playing endpoint and trying to play it like it was a real match and win the series. So coming into, like, What does this mean in terms of where we are in the process? I mean, you said before, internally, if you're talking privately, you're trying to motivate a player. You're not just telling him, we're going to be good. You tell him, we're going to win a major together. We're going to do these things. So where does it go from here? What's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, the dream starts at the top of any group. And, operationally, I'm the top of complexity right now. And so I set that dream. I set that bar. And you get players that adopt it and take our dreams together and hopefully carry it to the promised land, right? This is a special group of guys. You hesitate to put too much pressure on their shoulders. And it's funny, like I'm despite what people said about me after that tweet, like I spent a good amount of my time letting them know, like, hey, we're patient here. Like, don't feel pressure of failure. Like, you have to deliver. So, when we got to London, we had Astralis first. We always have Astralis first. It's kind of a joke in our org. Like, we always have to play Astralis first. We have Vitality and Navi. And I just said to him, like, look, this is experience. The journey to the peak goes through lots of troughs and valleys and ups and downs. Like, if you guys come out here and just get beat around, I'm not going to freak out and tweet. Like, we're on a journey together. We have to have each other's backs. We've got the passion. We've got the fire in the belly. We see the dream. We see where we're going. You can't get too impatient. Of course, we'd love to go and win blast, but let's be realistic, right? Keep outworking people. Keep believing. Stay positive. Be mature. When you criticize people inside the roster, inside the team, do it in a mature manner. When you're receiving criticism, don't be easily offended. People that are easily offended causes fracture. It causes conflict. It causes argumentation. That's how teams die. Treat each other with respect. Have these conversations. Play more. Watch more demos. Continue to improve. Don't expect to roll out there today and beat up on Astralis. We're at the time we were a young boy juggernaut. I think right now we're a teenage juggernaut. Wait till you see this thing fully grown. The journey's going to be really interesting, and I'm really thankful and grateful for the people that I've surrounded myself with, and for the players that have been kind enough to come and work so hard that I have to get on sometimes and be like, please just take a break. It's, I'd say, like, go to a movie or go out, get a steak. It's been challenging the past few months. They know what this means to me. And to see them day in and day out so devoted to this dream, so devoted to reaching that peak, it touches my heart. It's cheesy or whatever. The old man gets crying on camera. But when you're this passionate about something, you want something this badly, and then you surround yourself with a band of brothers or sisters who believe the same, and everyone's marching up that frickin' hill, clawing and scratching and bleeding and supporting each other optimistically no matter what. And then you get these little moments where the clouds break and the sun shines down on your ass for that day. That day, you're kings and you're queens. For a few hours, and then you go back to work. But I really thank God, and I feel really blessed to be on the journey with these people. And I don't know the future and how long that journey will last, but it's been one of the greatest joys and honors of my career in recent times to be at work with these guys. So any fans out there, I've said before, the bandwagon's hot right now. And like we joked before we started taping, the next time we lose, the people who lost money at bets will send me 1,000 hate messages. But, I think we're different. I'm not objective, of course, but I think we're special. I think what we stand for and the way we go about things is worth being a fan of. We might not be as fancy as Cloud9 or as funny as Carlos at G2. And, we don't have as many trophies as Fnatic, but I think we're a team worth cheering for. I think we're an organization worth cheering for. I think my players are damn well worth cheering for. So you want to hop on this bandwagon, chew fucking chew. Let's go.
This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Bobby, Dean Tanglis, Istar, JDubs, Jensen Goh, the Puyallup Tribe, Soliko, Spencer Green, Tobias Bernasconi, Xinged, and a special thanks, as always, goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question in those AMAs I do each month. Do you want teasers? teasers for who's going to appear next on my content. Maybe you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions about esports with me. Well, if so, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.